Good morning, Greene County. Hello and welcome to the 7th financial huddle of the year. This particular huddle, we're going to use this time to talk about the requested budget for 2024. And all of the resources that we're going to go through today are available online, and we'll show you that after we finish the main presentation document, which we already have up. So as you know, every office and department in the county is asked to give us a request for the 2024 budget. They turn in those requests. This particular year, Commission wanted to make a goal of having a 5% COLA within the budget. And so we have added that 5% COLA into these requested budget figures. And of course, this is just a goal, but this helps us know how far we're off or what we need to look at doing to make the budget balance. So to quickly go through the totals, we've got kind of our bond summary page that does show up in the budget book. But this one just is looking at current year revenues and current year activity to come up with a current year change. If you see a negative number, it means it's a use of a prior year balance. And prior year balances also qualify as revenue. But we're not showing that revenue in this requested budget. So just to kind of quickly hit some of these, we have general revenue, and we have total estimated revenues of about $93,800,000. That's a little less than last year, even though we have a 5% increase in sales tax. And right now, sales tax is going down, but we are, when we analyze it, we are picturing a turn in sales tax early in the year and us ending about 5% up. So that's me sticking my neck out, but we don't want to underestimate revenues. We have net transfers, and those are mainly transfers for bond payments of about $20,786,000. And then we have total requested expenditures of $99 million. And then within that, we always have projected savings, and some of those are our contingency, which we don't expect to spend, and then vacancy in excess of vacancy for mainly the court order, because we don't put vacancy in for the court order. So the net difference that we have for general revenue is a use of prior year balance of $22,498,000. That's not sustainable. We could afford it in 2024, but to do it again in 2025 would be impossible. So obviously, the requests were considered large for our means. I'm not going to say they weren't needed, because that's not my judgment, but the requests came in large for what our means are to be able to afford them. And so that's general revenue. And so we're going to focus on general revenue in the presentation once we get through the other funds. Road and Bridge, we have road and bridge funds growing by about $4,300,000. The assessment fund is growing by almost $2,000, and that's before any vacancy. So we expect that to actually grow more than that in 2024, but that's a strong fund. We have Fund 203, the Real and Property Improvement Fund, and we show transfers in offsetting the expenditures plus a little interest being built there. So that's also a positive number. 911 is growing by at least $448,000, and the sewer district is a positive number. So we can go to the next page, Mike. That takes us to the Law Enforcement Sales Tax Fund, which is our other major fund besides GR at Fund 206. And at Fund 206, we have that ending with a zero balance, which is traditionally how we end up budgeting the law enforcement sales tax. However, you'll notice we have a net transfer up there of $3,084,000. So in order for law enforcement sales tax to be zero, general revenue is having to backstop it by $3 million. And so that's another area for us to look at. Parks Fund, that's a fully distributed fund, which we reflect here. Senior Services, they distribute awards, and that's fully funded here. Drug court has just a use of prior year funds of about $4,300. The 31st Judicial Circuit Surcharge Fund is a fund that uses court fees to provide money to improve the court's facility. And so we have about $90,000. This is a planned expenditure of existing fund balance. We got about $90,000 going to GR, and then we have about $139,600 going to the Real and Property Improvement Fund. And then that takes us to the Circuit Clerk's Fund, and another positive fund. Mike, the next page. We look at federal stimulus, and this is mainly now our ARPA funds. And so we anticipate being able to distribute about $20 million in ARPA funds this next year. Fund 227 is the Inmate Security Fund. It's just a use of prior year balance by about $8,000. Juvenile incentive, that's a use of prior year balance. The Local Emergency Planning Committee Fund, yes, LEPC. Sometimes we have to remember what that stands for. That's a fund that has a small growing balance. The Collector Tax Maintenance Fund, that's a use of prior year balance. I doubt that it ends up being that much, but they have the funds to cover that. The PA Handling Cost Fund is just a prior year use of about $5,000. We get PA Delinquency Tax, that's a growing fund. Prosecuting Attorney Training, that fund balances out. The Recorder's User Fund, still carrying forward a project, and so there's a planned spend down of about $172,000 to that strong fund. Courthouse Administration, we just have the balance listed there as an expenditure so that those funds are available if a need occurs, but that's a use of prior year balance. The Shelter for Victims Fund is actually a growing fund now, which makes me very happy. Sheriff fees, that balances out. We have a Sheriff's Grants Fund. Right now, the way that's requested, there's a deficit of about $54,000. When we do the recommended budget, we'll balance that out. Either revenues will go up or transfers will go up, but then we also have been informed of a change in how 6 of the employees in that fund are being treated, and now 25% of their salaries will be automatically going to general revenue. So that'll reduce that net transfer figure also, but we'll have that cleaned up by the time we do the recommended budget. The Sheriff Dare Project Fund is a use of prior year balance. Sheriff's Justice Forfeiture is growing. Sheriff K-9 balances out as long as Sheriff's Training and Post-Commission. And then the Sheriff Revolving Fund is a use of prior year funds of not quite $5,000. That takes us to elections. You'll see here, we're anticipating that the cost of elections in 2024 will be about $1,220,000. And that's, of course, going to be supported by not only the county, but the other municipalities. And so they have transfers, or they have payments coming into that fund to offset those expenditures. Election Services is a growing fund. PA Contingency and the school fund balance out. And that takes us to the bond fund, where we are showing a $6,591,000 use of prior year balances. And how that actually breaks out is we have about $7,485,000 of bond funds that we anticipate using in 2024 that will be transferred to the Real Property Improvement Fund. And so that's why you see a decline in balance there. That takes us to our grand total of a total use of $45,290,000. Mike, we want to hit the next page. So as you know, when we put the GR2 tax in place, we put together a 20-year plan to plan out the use of it. And in 2023, we showed that our cash need by the end of 2023 needed to be $32,973,819. Not only our fund balance for operations, including current year and future operations that we needed, but then our reserve figures. So by the end of 2024, we think that, well, the plan is showing that the cash need on hand needs to be almost $29 million. And so you can see that our reserve balances are going up for the operating reserve and the 27th pay period reserve. But then our need for cash operations are going down a little bit. And we know in 2023, we had a planned reduction. And so we also have a planned reduction in 2024. So Mike, if you want to hit the next page. When we look at the know your numbers, this is what we've been doing in our financial huddles all year. We're looking at projections on how 2023 is going to end. So when we look at revenues, we think our revenues for 2023 are going to be down about $1.7 million. And our expenditures, though, are going to be better by about $2.7 million in the original initial budget. And all of these pages are available online. So if you feel the need to take a picture of the screen, you really don't have to. It's a document that you guys can easily download and see. And then our revenues in excess of expenditures are actually better by about $1 million than what the initial budget was. So initial budget, we're going to have revenues in excess of expenditures by about $8.5 million. And right now with our projections, we're about $9.5 million. So we're doing better by about $1 million there. However, transfers are about $300,000 worse. And that's mainly us having to do a bit higher transfer to LEST, to support LEST. So all in all, we're better in GR about $700,000. And when we do that, that's a good turnaround from last month when we presented, mainly because the sheriff's office's vacancy in excess of budgeted vacancy was much better this last payroll period. And so we were using that number for the remaining 6 pay periods going forward. And that's part of why we're in a much better position this month than what I reported last month. When we look at road and bridge, they look to be about $6,700,000 better than budget this year for cash. When we look at the assessment fund, initially we thought we were going to have a spend down of about $869,000 in that fund. That's been managed and controlled, and we expect that spend down to only be about $485,000, so about $384,000 better. And then that takes us to the LEST fund, where you can see our revenues are about right on pace with what the budget was supposed to be. Although we've had sales tax come in worse than we thought, the sale of surplus vehicles has made up for that difference. But when we look at expenditures, the expenditures are about $500,000 worse. And overall, our transfer is about $288,000 more that we need for law enforcement. And that negative $1,064,000, we believe, is the number that will take us to about a zero balance in LEST. So that's where we project we're going to end in 2023, and then we use those numbers to roll forward into 2024. So as you can see on this top section, we think that cash and general revenue is going to end in cash and general revenue is about $27 million. Mike, if you want to put your highlighter on that number. And it's made up of the warrants accounts and all of our reserve accounts. We have, at the end of the year, we're thinking we're going to have some receivables that are non-recurring receivables that we will get that money soon. Some of that is ARPA reimbursements to general revenue. That's almost $6 million. And then we have loans to mainly Fund 203, real property improvement, that will get paid back in the beginning of the year of almost $6,800,000. So we think our beginning cash balance for 2023 was really about $39,768,000. And so when we take our projected activity, that $8,888,000 use in cash, and then every year we have expenditures that get brought back into 2023, but the cash is actually expended in 2024. On average, we're estimating that to be about $2,500,000. So we think our ending 2023 cash balance will be about $33,400,000. Now, as from that earlier chart, our needed cash for 2023 was $32,000,000 $973,000. So last month when we reported, we had a shortage of about $400,000. Thanks to the change in vacancy pace in the sheriff's office, we're now projecting that we'll have excess cash of about $420,000. So that's about $420,000 that we can actually spend in this next year to help our budget. Run to the next page. So this is the budget office's exercise looking at general revenue and how 2024 is shaping up. So we have requested revenues, net transfers, expenditures, and projected savings and budget. This is that same $22,497,000 figure that was on that very first page of this presentation. So that's what we see the requested yearly net operations figure being. I mentioned we have a planned spend down for GR2. That spend down is almost $4 million. And that's part of our long-term 20-year plan. It's supposed to happen this way. And then we have prior year excess funds of almost $420,000. And then that leaves us with, well, what do we typically do that's not in the requested budget? And that's budgeting vacancy. And the impact of budgeting vacancy to GR and then LEST, since GR has to support LEST, is $3,800,000. So when we add all that up, we've got a negative figure of $14,279,760.39. This is the amount that the budget office has to find and make reductions for, or increase revenues, or find additional beginning cash to make up this difference in order for the county to have a balanced budget. $14,280,000. However, in this requested budget, we put the goal of a 5% COLA. So that 5% COLA for GR and LEST adds up to $3,352,592.76. So when we do our recommended budget, we'll go ahead and recommend the step increase, but in the recommended COLA will be zero. And that's so that commission can weigh the reductions that budget has done against departmental requests. And then they can also weigh the COLA. And that way, if they're forced to do a 4% COLA, then it's not in the recommended budget, and they can add that 4% COLA plus whatever they need to add here. It's all going to be a balancing act to get us to balance at the end. And so we've made a number of cuts. And actually, Mike and I have gone through our first pass for the recommended budget. And we're still, we're about $490,000 short in just balance the budget. So we have to find not only the 490, but an additional 3,352,000. So after our first pass, we still have to go back and find another $4 million, just so commission will have the room to effectively make decisions. And unfortunately, some of the cuts or reductions, I want to say instead of the word cuts is not a very friendly term, reductions that we've suggested, I know some of those are going to be reductions that department heads and office holders might not be willing to accept. And so there'll be some discussions. But our goal is to provide enough funding to where commission has the ability to make a decision to give a 5% COLA if they can. So that's really it for the presentation. That leaves us some questions, but what I want to show you is the resources that we have available online. And then we'll go ahead and go through one of those resources. So, every year we try and be extremely transparent with this budget process. And so you'll see this first column here, budgets, on the budget office page on the county website. We have 4 files. We have the requested presentation. You just saw that. So it's exactly everything you just saw is right there. And then we have the requested budget. And the requested budget this year is going to be just the office holder or the court order for each fund. And the total is broken down into personnel, operations, or capital. And that is actually the appropriated requested budget level. But we have additional detail provided. And the first one is the one that we're going to end up opening up, and that's the requested department level totals. So you'll actually see the grayed out the totals that represent the requested budget, but then the departments within an office holder within each fund, we have those totals for you to better analyze. And then the final thing is the requested budget plan, and that's the detail that you guys are used to seeing. It's every position, every account number, and the volume with that. And that's our plan, and it's used to support the decisions that commission makes when they appropriate the personnel, operations, and capital for each office holder within each fund. So Mike, if we can go ahead and just open up, there we go, the requested department level. And I just want to run through Fund 101 and Fund 206 while we have time, so you can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at. So for the circuit courts, if you can go back up just a little bit, Mike. For the circuit courts, you can see that we have an increase of about $173,000 for circuit courts. And then the very next thing is a new department, which is the drug treatment court. And that's showing a $456,000 increase. That's not the actual increase amount. There was funds that went to drug treatment court in the 2023 budget, but it was under the mental health department. And so this is just a new department, so it's showing as a full increase, but it actually isn't. And then we have the circuit clerks fund, and that's reducing by $300. Thank you, Brian. And then we have juvenile courts. That's an increase of about $232,000. Juvenile detention, an increase of about $156,000. And juvenile grants, which is going up about $38,000. So if we see the court order in whole, that court orders an increase of about $1,057,000. Now, when we see these increases, particularly in personnel, I want you to keep in mind that this is reflecting the 5% COLA. So these numbers are in there at the 5% COLA. So this is reflecting what we've received as requests plus us putting that 5% COLA in there. So when we look at the prosecuting attorney, we can see total personnel going up in the prosecuting attorney's office by about $761,000, operations reducing by about $160,000, and capital reducing by about $10,000 for a net increase of $592,000. When we look at the sheriff's office, we've got the sheriff's office department increasing by about $1.8 million, HIDA reducing by about $3,000, jail, which is only personnel and general revenue, increasing by about $6,149,000. The fugitive apprehension unit increasing by about $135,000, and the family justice center under the sheriff's office increasing by about $15,000. So the net increase at the sheriff's office is a request level of about $8,090,000. When we look at the auditor's office, we have a net increase in the auditor's office by about $51,000. The collector's office in GR, that increase is about $54,000. When we look at the county clerk, the clerk's main office department is increasing by about $55,000. Elections, which is a presidential election year, when we look at 2024 elections, we have requests where that increase is about $802,000. And then archives is about $16,000, voter registration about $85,000. So we have a net increase in request by the county clerk of about $958,000. When we look at the public administrator, that net request is about $65,000. The recorder is all personnel, and that's about $39,000. And the treasurer has a net increase of about $3,900 and, well, almost $4,000. That takes us to the commission departments. Commission is actually reduced their overall request by about $13,000 for the commission department. The PIO has made their reduction of about $82,000. Budget office, we've decreased ours by about $156,000. HR has a net increase of about $21,000, along with purchasing about $21,000. General services has a net decrease of about $70,000. Pretrial has a net increase of about $208,000. And this is another department where when we reduced the mental health funds, they had an employee and some funds in mental health that got moved to pretrial. So that's part of what their increase is. When we look at the medical examiner, they have a net increase of about $46,000. Information systems net increase is about $331,000. Office of Emergency Management has a net decrease of about $31,000. And in their pre-disaster fund, a net decrease of about $7,500. The county administrator has a net increase of about $83,500, and that's mainly because they added staff mid-year last year. So it wasn't in the 2023 budget, but it's in budget here. A lot of that's going to be reimbursed by ARPA funds. The building ops has a net increase of $4,130,000. Of that, $3,912,000, I believe is the number, is ARPA projects. And so that's funded by ARPA funds out of that $4,130,000 increase. When we look at resource management, there's an increase in requests of about $255,000. And then we have various non-departmental funds, but county operations, negative $2,500, county operations, $8,366, negative $15,000 on county operations. We have an increase in the 511, which is about $2,089,000. And what's that, Mike? Health Department. Yeah, thank you. So that 511 is the Health Department. They've made a request of about $2 million more than what they've received in 2023. And then 512 is a decrease of about $1,683,000. Department 521, which is our general non-departmental account, is an increase of about $132,000. That's things like utilities, insurance. 531 is a flat zero. That's our municipal distributions. It's $200,000 a year. And then Fund 921 is our contingency, which is 3% of our revenues. And so we have that increasing by about $181,000. So that's what gets us to total commission net increase of about $5,212,000. And of course, $3,912,000 of that is ARPA funds increase. So all in all, we're showing an increase in requested expenditures on the GR side of about $16,124,000. And so that's what Mike and I have to work with when we try and find those reductions of about $18 million to get down. So we have increased expenditures of about $16,123,000, but we have to find reductions of close to $18 million. So that kind of gives you an idea of what we're looking at. So previous year in 2023, we had not only our planned spend down of a little less than $4 million, but we also had excess funds close to $6 million. And so it's not a surprise that we're looking to have to make reductions more in 2024 than what the increases in 2024 are. Mike, if we can just go forward a few pages to where 206 is. 1 minute, okay. But we'll just hit the totals here. So in 206, the court order is just an increase of about $64 million, or $64,000. Prosecuting attorney is an increase of about $168,000. The sheriff is an increase of about $2,353,000 in the law enforcement sales tax fund. And commission total, which is pretrial and workers' comp, is an increase of about $407,000, which gives us a total increase in LEST of about $2,992,000. So that 2,992,000 and the 16 million that we saw before does give us close to that $18 million range that we're looking for. But that is actually exactly where I wanted to end. That gives you a pretty good idea of how we're approaching the budget this year. And the detail for anyone who wants to see it is transparent and right out there on our webpage for you to take a look at it. So I encourage everyone to do that. I would also like to encourage everyone to look at your departments. And if there are cuts from your requested budget that you would like to submit, we're more than willing to take those. But more importantly, if there's differences that you've noticed with your 2023 operations that could change our beginning cash number, let us know those too, and we'll take those into account. Everybody, I'd like to thank you for attending today and taking an interest in our budget. It affects everybody, and we take it very seriously. Have a nice day.